Today's is negotiation mastery. And does anybody ever hear of a gentleman by the name of Chris Voss? Anybody? Kenny Urbina says yes. Okay. So I've seen him speak. I think I was introduced to him through some Tom Ferry events. He's a pretty interesting speaker. His background, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we hear you good.
His
Yes.
background, he's a retired FBI hostage negotiator, which seems like a pretty high stress position. And he's gone to opening up his own consulting business. And you might say, well, what the heck does hostage negotiations have to do with real estate? And I think it's all about the negotiation aspect of it. And there are principles of negotiating, and I'm going to kind of share with you a couple of things before I get into the presentation. The first thing I'm going to say is the worst negotiation is the negotiation that you don't know you're even in. Okay, the worst negotiation is the negotiation that you don't even realize that you're in. And according to some pretty reliable academic studies, we're involved in 70 negotiations every single day. And we don't even think about it. These are unconscious negotiations. And another insight for me is in a negotiation, you're either the favored or the fool. You're either the favored or the fool. And what I mean by this is if you're out on a negotiation, I'm going to use the typical listing appointment. And just for context, does anybody want to volunteer just to kind of role play with me for a minute here? You know,
Go ahead, Rob. I'll role play with you.
So Ron, if you're out at a listing opportunity, right, and you're up against one or two other people, do you think that there is somebody that is the favored, or is basically they're decided in advance that they're biased towards giving them the business, and the other person might just be there to validate that decision?
I've had that happen to me a few times, but not.
I want you, and I want to have this conversation with
you in
you.
a couple minutes.
So let's
Just in the
assume
middle
that.
of something.
Let's assume that. Let me just mute everybody here.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
So Ron, if you could unmute yourself. So let's assume that somebody has Aunt Sally, who has her real estate license and sold their sister's house, right? And they had a conversation with Aunt Sally, and then they invite you over. Why are they inviting you over?
Well, it could be because it's courteous, or they just want a second opinion before they make a decision. And I'm usually ready for that objection. So,
Okay,
if they do.
so Ron, in the case where there's an Aunt Sally, and do you mind if I role play with you just a little bit here? I just want to get some insight. So if my sister sold her house with Aunt Sally, and you reached out to me and introduced yourself, or I see you sold the house in my neighborhood, and I say, you know what, Ron, I just wanted to have you out here. I want to have a conversation with you. My family member sold their house with Aunt Sally. It went well. I just want to hear what you had to say. From the onset, like, why do you think that they're having us come out there in most cases?
I don't think they're totally sold on Aunt Sally.
Okay, I'd agree with you on that, right? And a lot of times it comes down to a pivot where they might say, hey, Ron, you know what? Appreciate the fact that you sold 3 houses in this neighborhood, but the market seems pretty hot, and Aunt Sally's willing to do it for 1.5%. Can you do that?
I would probably say, well, let me show you my presentation, what I do for you, and then we'll just talk about commission after that. So I would go through my presentation with them, show them what I can do for them, where my strong parts are to get their house sold. The main thing is I would tell them is that, I'm here to get your home sold and get you from point A to point B. So this is what I'm going to do for you. And after I show them everything that I do, I'm going to say, is this worth 6%? Or is this worth 5%? Whatever it is. And if they say, well, she'll do it for 1.5, I said, well, if she's that eager to lower her commission, how do you think she's gonna be negotiating for you when your contract comes in?
So you think, Ron, that there's one person that's favored in a negotiation? In other words, I believe if you sold 3 houses in that neighborhood, that you're probably the favored, right?
I would
And
think,
what the homeowner is trying to do is trying to say, hey, you know what? I'm trying to compare,
missions,
a Ford Pinto to, a Rolls Royce. And if you're the favored, okay, you're probably going to get the business anyway. So what Chris Voss contends is that if you're the best option, that you don't need to cut the price, and you can't get confused with if they're never going to go with you anyway, and you hold the line and you lose the business, you can't second guess your decision-making process, because there are some people who are going to use you to get the information, right? And give it to, Aunt whoever, Aunt Sally, right? And they never intend to use you. And that's where you're the fool. And then there are cases where you're the favored. And if you're the favored, there's really no necessity for you to compete on price. Does that make sense?
yeah.
And a lot of times in this business, Ron, what's going to happen is people are going to see that they might have lost a transaction, and then they're going to assume next time maybe I should have cut my price. But chances are they probably would have lost the transaction anyway if you're not the favorite in that process.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's just up to 1.5%. I mean, how can you put it in MLS? She'd have to sell it on her own. Or she's working for free, but anyway, but let's just say that they're offering, Aunt Sally was gonna do it for 4%. After my presentation, because I have a killer presentation, so after my presentation, if they're still not willing to pay me the 6% or 5%, 5.5%, then I would probably say, are you willing to negotiate? Are you willing to sign my contract if I can do it for 4.5%? And see if they make a move on that. Now, if they make a move on that, then it tells me they're working on numbers. So rather than walk away from a listing, I would probably take it for the 4.5, give 2.5 away and keep 2 for myself, if that's the case. But sometimes it could be a lot lower in commission.
So,
than-
Ron, let me put a cherry on this subject for a minute, and I apologize for the change and the difficulty some people had getting in. Hopefully, we'll have that worked out next week. But I want to make sure I know who's on, and then get you a copy of the recording in case you have to leave early or you wanted to go back to something that you heard. But here's another really insightful thing that Chris Voss said. If you're in a negotiation, okay, we talked about the worst negotiation is the one that you don't know that you're in. Now, if you're in a negotiation and you don't know who the fool is, it's usually you. So if you don't know who that fool is, it's usually you in that particular negotiation. So I'm going to give the floor to Renee for our mortgage minute, and then I'm going to come back and give you, I'm going to build on the content we started talking about. So,
Can I add something to this before we go?
absolutely.
Real quick. So when I'm on the phone with the seller to make the appointment, one of the things that I ask them, there's a few questions that I go through. But one of the questions I ask them, are you going to be interviewing other agents for the job? And if they say, yes, we have 2 other agents coming by, then I would say I'd like to be the last one. Now, if they say Aunt Sally is, well, we have a cousin that's in real estate, and we would prefer her to list the property, but we're not really sure, then I would be the first one. I would want to be the first one because I would go in there and kill the presentation. But I always ask that question first, if they are interviewing other agents, this way I know what I'm up against when I go to the appointment.
Okay. Very, very Very good tip. I'm going to walk you through a process after this, Ron, and I think some of it's going to reinforce your mindset. Some of it's going to, broaden your decision making, I believe. But I'm going to give it over to Renee for a minute, and then we'll come back to this topic.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I want to just take a second to talk about what's going on in the market because it's always very exciting. The market has been extremely sensitive the past week and a half. Economists are searching for data all over the place, looking to try to find some direction in what to expect. Because remember, everything's in the expectation. So economists now are looking across the pond. They're looking at Europe to get an indication of their GDP and inflation numbers. 1 minute, economists are telling us we're going to have a soft landing and we're going to get 8 rate cuts this year. And the market rallied, and we saw that in December, January, rates started to move down. We saw a lot more buyers come into the market, and now all of a sudden the brakes are on. And the latest Goldman Sachs report indicates, nope, hold on, everybody, we're not getting 8 cuts. 8 rate cuts, we'll probably only get 4. So as I always say, markets do not like uncertainty, and rates are kind of holding in that upward position right now. They've bounced up about 0.25% from where they were back in January, and they're the highest that they've been since December 23. But that's not the worst news. As we always say, rates in the 6s are still pretty good, 6s, low 7s. It's going to be a choppy ride until the market finds some clear conviction on what to expect. So what do we do in the meantime? What we do is try to educate our clients, right? Hold their hands through this turbulent market, but more importantly is find products outside the box. And that's where our specialty is. So a couple of calls ago, I spoke to all of you about the Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA loans, and we talked about counties that these homes were eligible in. And I promised I would work on a list and get us a list of all the properties, and I have that now. So just to remind everybody, these products are 3% down, no mortgage insurance, no income limit. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and interest rates are 1% below where they currently are on conventional loans. That's huge. That's going to increase your buyer's purchase power tremendously, and set you apart from other agents because now you can market their home if you're taking a listing on the property, stating that you have a special product just for that property. I have a list of them right now. I have 4 counties in New Jersey that I have a list. I can get counties in Florida for those Florida people or Virginia people or any other out of state that you need. But right now I have Bergen, Essex, Hudson, and Passaic, and there's at least 130 homes in those 4 counties that are eligible for this product. So if any of you are interested, please just shoot me an email or ping me, and I can get with you and show you the list. And if you have listings you're taking right now, or trying to get a listing and you have this address, that's a huge advantage. Or if you have a buyer out there that perhaps is a limit they can qualify, let's look at this product for them because chances are we can get them into more, more purchase power. In addition, we're doing a lot of those non-QM loans that you hear the ding ding about, getting people into a home with just a P&L, with just a bank statement. We're doing a lot of these products, no green cards, no social security card, all kinds of real creative stuff out there that is heavily being used in the market right now. So otherwise, does anyone have any information they want to share about products that they're in need of or situations that they are coming up against that perhaps we can help you with? Everybody's quiet today.
Renee, they're asking if it's on specific homes or just in the specific towns and counties.
It's specific counties and within the county specific addresses. So right now there's 130 addresses that qualify for the product in those 4 counties.
Is that a neighborhood or just a specific home?
So it's interesting, Mickey. Sometimes we see it's a whole geographic neighborhood. Other times it can be one street and only 2 houses qualify. Again, these are banks, these are local banks that have to meet lending in a certain criteria in their neighborhoods, and they're suffering. They're in trouble now because they're not lending enough in those neighborhoods. So our company reached out to those banks and said, hey, let us help you. Give us your community resource product, this amazing product, and we'll sell it for you. So
I have
it's the best kept secret right now.
I have a question regarding the 3% loans. Can't you get a conventional loan, 3% down, and not
Sure.
have all the restrictions?
Oh, no. Conventional 3% down is going to have some hefty mortgage insurance on it.
So that, would you
And it's
rather, if you're
wait,
not doing a condo, would you just go FHA with 3.5?
no, because the key with this product, the goal with this product is to save them on the monthly payment. The rates are significantly lower than a conventional or an FHA. And then when you combine that with mortgage insurance, Scott, your payment is a lot higher.
But you said it's only in 3 counties. Is this also in where we're selling in Florida?
Oh, yeah, it's all over the country. I'm just saying right now, the list that I got yesterday, I carved up to the 4 counties that I'm in up here. But we have Maryland, Florida, Virginia. It's all over the country. So that's what I'm
That's-
saying. If you have buyers out there right now that you want to see if they qualify for a better product and rate, tell me, email me. I'll connect you with one of the loan officers or myself, and we will research that area for you and come up with a list of names in that area, a list of addresses. Yeah,
Now that is a conventional loan. It's not FHA, right?
correct. It's conventional financing, but it's conventional financing with a lot of bells and whistles. It's through one specific product.
What's the MI coverage on that product you're speaking about?
No MI, Scott. No mortgage insurance.
Renee, is there any way that we can find out if there's any in Monmouth or Middlesex for our branches and Remax that are? a
Yeah,
little
we'll
bit
talk about that,
down?
Tiffany. We'll get to that.
I'm just going through the chat, and these are the questions that some of the people are asking.
Mhm.
So that's why
Uh-huh.
I'm bringing them up to your attention.
Yeah, we don't have any yet for Monmouth, but we're working on it. We're actively getting out and talking to more local community banks because this whole Basel III, if you Google it and read about it, this is a big thing that's happening for banks, local banks in your communities. They don't have enough reserve requirements, and they have to figure out how to do that. So our company is reaching out to the local banks and saying, hey, we'll take all these loans off your books and we'll do the servicing for them and help you with your Basel III requirement, but we want your product in return. And that's how we're getting these. So it's a unique little feature for us. And we've already closed a few of them, so they work. You know, they take a little more time. You need like an extra 5 days to get them done, but it's a great product. And the only thing is you cannot own any other real estate when you close on these. So you don't have to be a first-time buyer, but you can't own any other real estate. So it's a nice way to combat, you know, a first-time buyer that's out there that says, oh, I can't afford it now where rates are. Well, yeah, you can, because this product rates are significantly lower. And again, we have, you know, this product's not for every single buyer, but if they don't fit into this, then maybe we bounce them into a down payment assistance program, or if they are a first-time buyer, maybe we do a NJMFA or a Florida product or whatever other product we have to try to find the out-of-the-box stuff. That's what this market's all about right now. Those are the buyers that are out there.
This product, though, so you don't need to qualify them at the higher rate. You're saying you can just use the
No.
lower rate.
Correct. Yep.
All right, so if you have any other questions, reach out to our very qualified esteemed lenders that are you all know who they are. So I'm gonna get back, Renee, to the negotiation conversation here, and I think
Great.
for this session, I want everybody to not just absorb, but if you're in a place where you can take some notes, take some notes. It's going to reinforce the content, and it's going to help it be second nature for you, so you don't have to think about what you're going to say, because you know there's knowing, there's understanding, then there's teaching. I want to get you at least to the understanding phase of the knowledge from today. So let me share my screen, my notes. All right, so we have 70 negotiations a day. The worst negotiation is the one that you don't know that you're in. The reason why, negotiations can be difficult is because we have something called the survival instinct in ourselves, and the survival instinct is 75% negative. Chris Voss speaks about that in his opinion, probably 25 to 30% of, about 7 trusted blindly, but the percentage that can't be trusted, they really sting when we get burned. So that's why, human nature is to be cautious or negative because of that propensity for, people who abuse our trust, can really wreak lots of harm. He talks about handwriting anchors notes into your brain. You probably heard seek first to understand and then to be understood. So he says seek first to understand, then confirm your understanding, and this makes the other side feel understood. That's a lot of words, but it's okay to get it wrong. It's not okay to not confirm your understanding. For example, it sounds like you're saying X. Okay. Who on the call would be afraid of, you're in the conversation for 7-10 minutes, and then you're sharing what you feel you heard and you get it wrong. How does that make you feel? Anybody? I'm going to call on David Haller.
Makes you feel ridiculous.
It makes you feel ridiculous, sometimes embarrassed, right? But what if I told you that, repeating it back and getting it wrong actually has a benefit to us? Is anybody going to buy into that before I give you the evidence? Was that Rob Durso that made the comment about ridiculous? Whitney, go ahead.
That's me. I agree.
Where you're going, but sometimes giving someone the opportunity to like teach you and clarify and get more specific will draw them more into the conversation. And the fact that you caught this mishap might make it a more meaningful conversation.
Absolutely. And Whitney, how many times do you think in a conversation, two people leave the same conversation with a different understanding or a different meaning to what had just happened, right? Do you think that that's possible or maybe even probable? What would you say?
Probable.
So I have one probable. Whitney says probable. Okay. So what I'm going to share with you is when you repeat back to them what you think you heard, and even if you get it wrong, you win in 2 ways. Number one is if I repeat what I heard back to you, Rob or Whitney, and I get it right, it releases oxytocin, okay? And oxytocin is a drug. It's a chemical in your brain that's a bonding drug. Okay, so it makes us feel connected. When I get it correct, when I get it right, you feel like, hey, this oxytocin is going off and it's triggering my brain to subconsciously want to have a bonding relationship with you because you got it right. Now, wait, it even gets better, because if you get it wrong and you allow the other side to correct you, okay, which is something salespeople have a hard time doing. So if we repeat what we think we heard and then we allow them to correct us, guess what it releases? Another drug. okay, it releases serotonin. And serotonin is a confidence drug. And that drug makes
Good.
you feel good and in charge. And then you want to continue with us because you feel like we've connected from the serotonin hit. Okay. So this is like flipping a coin where heads you win, tails you win, right? All right. So I just want to repeat that. So if you get it right, okay, this oxytocin, it's the same drug that has a parent love a child unconditionally, right? You know, the oxytocin is a bonding drug, okay? It's a hormone, and you know, a parent and a child is the science behind it is the oxytocin that bonds the parent to the child, okay? The serotonin is a power drug, which makes them feel like they're in charge and that they want to work with you because you gave them the opportunity to be heard. Okay, this is some pretty deep stuff that I never really thought about. I thought about it more like being a chess match, a negotiation, and this really broke it down for me. And you know, who wouldn't want to get it broken down by an FBI hostage negotiator, which makes real estate seem, you know, somewhat insignificant. Okay. Never be afraid to articulate what you heard and know that it's okay to be wrong. Okay. Abandon the mindset of you have to be right. You know, people use terms like I've died of embarrassment or humiliation because I got it wrong. Okay. That's not the way that we need to approach our relationship with, you know, our our counterparts in negotiations, who are hopefully going to be our clients. When you allow somebody the opportunity to correct you instead of debating them on something, they feel elevated in a higher status, and you conferred esteem to them, and then you want to repeat what you heard from them again to make sure that you've gotten it correctly. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here that you can use the human nature in terms of helping us get the desired outcome. Now, I'm looking at you, Rob Durr. So you and I have been around a long time, and you know, years ago, techniques were different, right? Techniques that worked when you and I started in the business on the phone right now, do they work?
Not real effectively, no.
Not real effectively, correct. So years ago there was the yes momentum, okay, and this was oversold, and our society has been battered and bamboozled by the yes proposition, and it was also called momentum selling, right? It would be
Yep.
like, you know, Rob, you're wearing a suit jacket. I'm wearing a suit. Are you wearing a suit jacket? Yes, right. Hey, are you in the office? Rob, are you in the office now?
Yes,
Oh, yes. Okay. Don't you think we should be doing business together?
yes. And
So
you were
that
shaking
was
your
like
head like this while you were
that
asking
that
the questions.
that was the yes momentum of years gone by. Okay. And crafty, unethical, that 25 to 30% of the population that can't be trusted abused it. Okay. And once we've been bitten by the yes momentum, then we flip on it and we go in the exact opposite. Okay. It's kind of, you know, the analogy that I think that Chris used was it's like a battered child, right? You know, if there's a battered child and you go to hug the battered child out of compassion, the child's going to flinch because they were beaten before. Okay. So it's the same principle. So Chris talks about what he says, the no orientation. Okay. Which would be using phrases like, are you against, putting out a competitive compensation so that we get more buyers? Is it ridiculous that we get this house on the market next weekend instead of in 3 weeks? Does it seem like a bad idea for us to price it so that we get multiple offers and like instead of trying to get the yes, you're using Does it seem like a bad idea to, offer competitive compensation to somebody that brings us a qualified buyer paying, full market value, or, like things like that are different ways that we can influence people to make the right decision without betraying trust. The trigger of the no gives the other side, or has the other side feeling protected, while the yes makes them feel vulnerable. Okay, I want to repeat that. The trigger of the no has the other side feeling protected, while, if they yes all over themselves, they feel vulnerable, like they're getting taken advantage of. Okay. Discover or look for the subtle, unexpressed wants or needs, okay, and try to repeat it back and nail it. Okay. Seek for, the other side to say things like, wow, that's right, and that's going to be a true trust-based influence. He talks a little bit about, recapping, like, for example, if you have somebody that's been looking, for a home for a while and maybe is getting a little disenfranchised. And I don't know if my sentence context is correct, but I believe he said something like, look, let's recap what I hear you saying. Let's recap. What I hear you saying is you want to move. You understand the market is hot. You've been looking for a while. Nothing's caught your eye and you need more space. And then pay attention to the underlying meaning. If you repeat that back, okay, those sets of facts, do you think somebody's more likely to transact and to overcome the fear when you're acknowledging, you're acknowledging what they've expressed to you, right? You're building on that trust. And Chris even talks a little bit about how, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. Would you guys all agree that, either listing or selling a house has a little bit more uncertainty right now? We got lawsuits going on. We have, Renee saying interest rates are going up one week, next week they're going down. Would you say that there's some uncertainty in the market?
Absolutely.
So one of the principles that that he discussed was, if you can add some certainty to the marketplace, that helps with the decision-making process, right? If the market switches to a market where homes aren't selling as quickly, do you think a home seller will have some anxiety just like buyers do right now? Answer is yes. If I was listing your house, Rob Durso, and there's uncertainty whether it will sell, how much will I get? If I tell you that, every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, I'm going to call you and give you an update on how your home compares to the market, and you'll know exactly what's going on. You'll know what interest we've had, how many showings. I'm adding certainty into an uncertain environment, right? And I'm elevating our relationship and, making it easier for me to negotiate with you, whether that negotiation is, we need to reposition the price. If the negotiation is for a buyer, that maybe we need to be a little bit more competitive with our offers, right? So if you introduce some certainty to the process, okay, that builds trust in negotiations. And many of us think in a real estate transaction, what's the biggest negotiation?
Price.
Price. But so, and whom is it with? The seller and the buyer? Is it with the listing agent and the buyer's agent?
Seller and buyer, it could be both.
So
But seller and buyer primarily.
So I thought, Rob, that the negotiation, if I'm a negotiation expert, right? It's me negotiating on behalf of the buyer against the seller, right?
Right.
But is there a negotiation between you as the buyer's agent and the buyer to get the offer to be competitive? Is that not a negotiation?
Sure.
Right. And then there's a negotiation between you and the listing agent, the buyer and the seller. Like,
The whole
there's
process
so
is
many,
negotiation.
there's so many negotiations that we didn't even realize that we were in, right? And at the onset, I said the worst negotiation is the one that you don't know that you're in,
Right.
right? And you know, I don't have it written down in my notes, but one of the things that you know, Chris talked about in a different context was, is there anything we can do to make your offer more attractive to a seller? You're using language like that as part of our negotiation with, for example, a buyer in a competitive seller's market, right?
Plus, it makes it their idea when you ask the question.
Yeah, it does. Rob, what do you mean? Is there anything I can do? Well, could you put a larger earnest money deposit? Could you, take a smaller mortgage contingency? Is there anything that you can do to help me negotiate more effectively on your behalf?
The list that we got from Glenn on some of the things that he puts into his negotiations, I've been using that, and I had one customer that we made a dozen offers and we kept getting beat out. And there were some things that I thought were somewhat insignificant on the list, along the lines of, oh, well, the buyer will pay the seller's realty transfer tax. And things like that. I'm like, well, what's the difference? So you're only talking about a couple grand. But if you throw those things out to a buyer, and I had the buyer say, yeah, we'll do that. We would do that. Sure. If we could get it for an extra 3 grand or 4 grand, why not? And then you put that into the contract, and all of a sudden we made a deal. We beat out at least 20 other buyers. And it shocked me, to be honest with you, because I wrote off half of the things that were on the list as not significant enough to make a difference. And well, there you have it.
So negotiation is broader than, I thought it was. I thought negotiation was very narrowly defined, but I realized that, negotiation is the entirety of the process. Okay. It's not just the black and white. It's not just the net amount of money. It's not just, here's my offer compared to somebody else's offer. What are some ways that you enhance your negotiations, with a counterpart in the real estate transaction?
You talking to me, Rob?
Anybody. So
Counterpart.
we're working with buyer, we're working with other brokers. That's the whole basis of our industry, right? Is cooperation. What are some examples of how do we negotiate outside of what we discussed? And then
I
maybe
have
really
one
simple.
idea
Go
that
ahead.
I ask, this is Karma with Remax. I ask the buyer if he is willing to actually get the CO. But before we do that, there are 2 types in the CO in New Jersey. One, certificate of occupancy, and one is a smoke certificate. The smoke certificate, it's a very costs like $75, and a brand new device which 200 cost about 300. So if the situation with the smoke certificate, I advise the buyer if he can actually get the clear smoke certificate, because the mortgage company, of course, required it. A lot of them, they have agreed. And for the seller, felt, oh my God, you will do that? And that is actually one of the negotiation I do for representing an offer.
That's kind of like in Karma, that's like a lot of these type of things you can layer into getting offers accepted.
Yes.
And I'm looking for not only, ideas like that, a seller can say, hey, this makes my life easier. What are other ways that we can negotiate beyond that? Mr. Durso?
So one of the things, it may sound a little bit conceited, but put a little resume of your background as the agent in the package to the other agent, and form it in the way of, Dear Mickey, my name is Rob Dorso. I've been in the business for 30 some years. I maintain a certain level of achievement every year. I close X amount of transactions. Just a little resume and say, this is going to make your life, a transaction with me will make your life so easy you'll be able to go out and get another listing while I'm closing this one for you. Something as humbling for yourself, but to them, almost trying to sell yourself to them like you would to a seller. Again, I've had really good success with agents saying, oh, wow, that's so great. Or you're going to do that. I'm going to show up for the appraisal. I'm going to show up for this, meaning they don't have to. It makes a difference.
Is this
So
in your,
Rob,
to the buyer? Buyer's
No,
agent?
to the other agent, to the seller's agent or to the buyer's agent, depending
Right, the
on
listing
what
agent.
side you're on.
Right. That's pretty good. I like that.
That's a great idea. I love that. I never did this, but I like it. But I do, in addition to this, I have an idea that really the seller love. I ask the buyer to send a letter to the seller how much they love the home and they really wish to live inside the house. I mean, I have one transaction, we got it because the seller said, you know what, I never had this before. Somebody told me about the buyer love my home and they are easy to work with, and I have 2 children, and I think this is one of the
Unfortunately, most realtors won't show that letter anymore.
yeah,
Only a
Really?
handful.
yeah, so Karma, that gets us into an area that could be dicey with fair housing. I want to go into a whole nother stratosphere here, okay, team? Okay, what I want to talk about is, have you ever worked with an agent that doesn't do their part of the job and they don't do their role in the job? Ron Piccolo, you've been in the business a while. Raise your hand. Have you ever worked with some agents that don't do their end of the deal? Yes.
Yeah.
Now, when they don't do their end of the deal and you're committed to getting the transaction closed, who does it?
We do.
We do, right? You pick up the slack.
Of course.
You pick up the slack for the slacker, for lack of a better term, right?
Right, exactly.
And what's one of the most frustrating things when you're in a transaction? I just want to get some feedback. I'll start with David. What's one of the frustrating things about a real estate transaction?
The lack of communication, when you're
Okay.
so all about communicating with your client and there's so many different things going on through the inspection period, and they say I have the buyer and the listing agent has a number of items that we need to go through to get worked on, and they're out to lunch. They are horrible at communicating. They think you're going to do their job for you. It's horrific.
Great. Ron Piccolo, what's something else that is frustrating in a transaction?
Well, if there's an issue with the inspections and you need to resolve it and the agent doesn't call you back, like Dave said, it's communication. Appraisal issue,
Do you ever come across lack of integrity?
All the time.
yeah.
Right? Rob Durso, do you ever have lack of competence? Do you ever come across that in the business?
Often.
Rob,
Okay.
I have a good one that happened this morning, if I may.
Go ahead.
I show up at my listings inspection. The buyer's agent is not there, and we wait. He forgot to book the inspection after he already confirmed it.
Unbelievable.
So you
here in Broward, we don't have just that kind of a problem. I don't know who had the big idea, the smart idea that now all these agents here, they don't pass the test, the real estate test in English like I did. Even though I spoke only Italian when I came here, I had to memorize everything in English. Now they give the test in Spanish, and they give the test in Asian. And these people here, when they don't speak, I don't speak Spanish, I don't speak Asian. When they don't have the other agent there that speaks their language, it makes such a big mess that sometimes, because I have the knowledge and experience of all this crap here for the past 40 years, sometimes I have to say, who is your broker? And speak to their broker there. So that way we know what's going on. It's just crazy. Just nuts.
So Tony, if you have somebody, and you know what, there are even some cultures where, and I want to say this, properly, where there's some cultures where basically rules are optional, right? There's some societies where, people don't feel like they need to follow rules. And that's a challenge. I would say that there's a huge untapped opportunity in the world of negotiation is me calling you up and saying, hey, Tony, you know what? My buyer, they've been pre-approved by a lender I've worked with a lot. I don't know if this is the highest price that you're getting for the property, but I just want to share with you that, if we are fortunate enough to work together, I will return my phone calls. I'll be transparent with everything that's going on. You'll never have to ask me if anything was done. I'll reach out to you. And most importantly, Tony, I'll answer my phone. If those are some things that you think would lighten the stress on your seller and make the job a little bit easier for you, I look forward to working together with you. Now, what do you think about that negotiation? Do you think that you'd be more inclined to recommend somebody who communicated to you that way from the onset?
Rob?
That's for sure. If they even give you a chance, sometimes they don't even give you a chance. You talk to them, then you let them know, and they know who you are, especially if it's in the area where you work. But still, I don't know, all of a sudden they call you back and say, oh, the seller accepted another offer.
Right, but Tony, they may know who you are, but they don't know your commitment to communicate, right? And how frustrating is it for us? Forget about communicating. How frustrating is it for us when I try to call my counterpart in a transaction and they never do what? They never answer their phone, right? Is that when you send them an email, they don't respond to their email. You send them a text, they don't. Has anybody ever had that customer that other agent raise your hand, right?
I think many
Rob?
times, and that's the biggest challenge, is that a lot of
Right.
times you can't even get to a person. You send texts, you send emails, you leave
Right,
voicemails about your offer.
Mickey, you have a moral
Yes.
obligation to communicate with the opposing real estate professional.
Yes, you do,
How
but when
that
they don't
trip-
pick up.
No, listen to
So-
me. Listen to me, Mickey. You have an you have an obligation. So if somebody doesn't pick up, right? And you're having this conversation with them saying, hey, here's what I can do, right? In this transaction, I will make sure that all the deadlines are met. I will make sure that I schedule all the contingencies in advance. I will always communicate with you, whether there's a good update, a bad update, or no update. I will be that person. And when you call or text me, if I'm with a client, I can't answer, but I'll get back to you immediately. So if we do work together, I just want to let you know what you can expect. Okay, if that contract price from your client is, $5,000 less, but they feel certain, okay, even if they're not the brightest, other agent, they're probably going to go to their seller. You know what? I really like this Mickey. She has her stuff together. She always answers her phone or gets right back to me. I recommend that we take this offer. Okay.
Rob, I
I'm
had
gonna
an
tell
agent.
you, Rob, I've
Let
had
Colleen
a
speak.
scenario-
Hold on, let Colleen speak, please.
One at a time. Sorry, this is obviously a very emotional conversation here. Go ahead, Colleen.
Well, I had used that because I had attended another mastermind when you would discuss that. I had suggested that to Marcos Fuentes to use when he was presenting an offer. He had trouble getting hold of the agent, the listing agent, but he did text him, listing all the things that he will do and that he could count on him to be reliable and forthwith and stay in contact. And the other agent texted him back saying, you know what?
your offer isn't quite as high. Could you go up a little bit more? I really want to take your offer. And they did. They went up a little more and they got the deal because he reassured them he would take care of everything.
Right.
So
And
it does, it absolutely works, Rob.
I think,
Yeah.
I
It will
think,
work sometimes, but not in every scenario. And I can tell you for sure, I've had it happen just recently where I did get that. But I've also had more often than not the opposite, where I've even sent them my Zillow reviews or my Google reviews and explained that, you know, I work really hard, I'll do X, Y, Z, and still no reaction on the other side. So it's not a, you know, a given tool. It works sometimes.
all right.
Well, you're
incredible
always
that-
going to have those people.
So Mickey, can I, you know, I'm a big Mickey fan, right? You know that, correct?
Okay.
And what I'm
Okay.
saying is you're, I think sometimes you're overthinking the process. Okay, you know, if you were to, you know, if you sent me your Zillow, you're sending Zillow reviews to the other agent showing that you do a good job, Mickey?
Hold on, sorry, couldn't unmute. Yes, I send a Google and Zillow and
Right,
I
but
also have,
you're sending it to the other agent, correct?
correct, yes.
So here's where you have to take a couple of notes here because I care about you. If you were to go to that other agent and say, you know what, Mickey, if we were to put this transaction together, tell me what's most important that you want to see me do in the process to make the job easier for us both, right? And they say, you know what, it's really frustrating when the agents don't answer, or, you know, is the lender somebody you worked with before? Because you're going to get them to say what's significant to them. Because if they just had a transaction that fell apart because of a mortgage contingency in the 47th day, right after a 10-day extension, they might say to you, hey, Mickey, you know, how well do you know this lender? You know, my other client just lost 2 months of time on the market because something fell through. Or, you know, you'll hear what's relevant to them instead of just pushing out, you know, what we think might be relevant. Okay. So I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm saying, hey, you know, if we were to work together, you know, tell me what would be most important to you to make this transaction be, you know, stress-free.
I understand, and that theory works when you get the person to respond. My point is that sometimes you get those one-sided conversation and there's nothing you can do because they don't pick up. They'll text back with one-word answer, and they're just not, they don't reciprocate in a conversation. So you can't,
So,
there's nothing to say. It's like you send the offer, you give them a list of all your things, you know, what you're doing. And a lot of times I find these agents that just don't respond. I shouldn't say a lot of times. I'm going to say there are times.
so Mickey, let me just say, like, I would make it a priority. I can't imagine starting a transaction without having a, you know, a 3 to 7 minute conversation with the other side. I just can't imagine it. And I know how
Before
people.
you-
Oh, I'm
I-
sorry. I'm not talking about having a transaction. I'm talking about making an offer, trying to get my offer accepted.
Right, but in order to get the offer accepted, I'm a step ahead of you, Mickey. I'm assuming that we're going to do a transaction, and I need to talk to that person, okay? Because otherwise, I never get to the point of the transaction, and I don't have. You have to abandon your preconceived your perceptions of what people are because of the way that they behave, okay? And there's a quote here that I want to find, but you know, you're taking the bad apples and you're spreading that across the whole piece of bread here, and that's not the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. Sometimes you find a jerk, you can next, you know, what can you do? You know?
Well, no, and Tony, I'm going to call you out on that too, because you can find a jerk, but even the jerk wants an easier transaction, and the jerk wants somebody who's going to identify and highlight how they're different. Okay.
Oh, no, I agree with you,
So-
but like I said, sometimes you do everything that you can, but you still don't achieve it. But you know, like you said, sometimes you find the bad apple. What can you do? You know.
But Rob, what you're saying is try to build the rapport and have a conversation before you email an offer and connect with that person on a personal level, correct?
110 times out of 100.
I don't understand a lot of people's perspective probably on this because, for example, when you say we do both sides, sometimes we do whatever it takes. I've leveraged Colleen to literally help represent a seller on a side where the listing agent was so part-time and really uninvolved because I needed to get myself to closing. I had a goal for my buyer, and I realized that the listing agent had no idea what they were doing, or they're not involved that much. The sellers have a son-in-law involved, this and that. And Colleen stepped up and literally helped the transaction close. Without her, I don't know if it would have happened. And then you have another example, the opposite extreme, where I'm sending a letter to a broker thanking them for coaching their agent so well because the listing agent was such a professional. And I send them a little present and a thank you. We have all extremes right now in the marketplace. You got to know how to adapt person to person. You cannot put everybody in one box.
So there are bad apples. We can't perceive ourselves to be the victim. The business is fair. The business is fair. Okay, we all have, if we're going to do enough business, we're all going to have to deal with a bunch of bad apples, okay? But there are a way to handle bad apples, okay? And even bad apples, you know, want to have an easier process, right? So if you have somebody that's a bad apple, or maybe that's less competent, and you can identify how you can help facilitate the transaction to a favorable outcome with less stress, okay, they're going to, in their subconscious mind, gravitate towards that, because what it does, it hides the deficiencies that they have in their skill set and allows them to get to a commission check with more certainty. Would you all agree with that? And I think, you know, and Mickey, I truly respect your work ethic, your passion, and I feel your frustration, but I think it's channeled in the wrong way. In other words, I think when you have,
I think you misunderstood my point, Rob.
okay,
My point is that every so often, no matter what you do, you're going to get those agents that are, for whatever reason, just don't respond. And there's nothing I can do. I've had the only response I get is, okay, best and final is such and such date. Okay, yeah, I know, I read that online. I don't say that, of course, but and then at the end, sorry, your offer wasn't or sorry, we accepted another offer. Those are the only two forms of communication I get. That happens every so often, and I'm not saying that you know, that's the norm. I'm just saying that does happen, and there are instances where just nothing you can do about it. But in
right,
most cases, I am able to transact, and it works.
Right, but I'm acknowledging, Mickey, that there are some bad apples that you know, insanity is trying to change things that you can't change. Like, if you can't do anything, you know, you just need to understand and have the wisdom to understand that, hey, you know, I did everything I could. That was just a bad apple. But I think if we all could come to the conclusion that not everybody has the same needs for their client or themselves, and sometimes communicating, negotiating with the counterpart, whether you're working with a buyer, the listing agent, you're the listing agent working with a buyer's agent, right? And having a higher level of communication will help us do a better job for our clients, provide more certainty to the process, and eliminate some frustration. Okay. You know, and I don't, this is not about what you're doing, Mickey. This is just a generalization. Like, you know, some people, you send Zillow reviews, it's noise. For me, I would just want to have somebody, if somebody called me up and said, you know what, if we're fortunate enough to do this transaction, you know, I will be transparent. I will meet all the deadlines. If there's ever a problem, you'll hear it from me first. You won't have to ask. And, you know, I pride myself on making sure that we close on time. And, you know, I surround myself with a group of professionals that I can also rely upon. You know, mic drop moment, folks. Like, I think that you're going to have a lot more offers accepted, but we've been in this crazy market that a lot of us have forgotten that. Colleen, I'm turning it to you. And we're gonna end this in about 5 minutes because of the technical problems in the beginning. So I've extended it. Go ahead.
What I was thinking is, sorry.
No, I'm sorry if I was interrupting you there. when you say these crazy market, what is it that you mean?
So since the pandemic, Tony, we've not been in a normal market. Okay, the market has not been normal. Getting 40 offers on a house is not a normal market. So we've lost the fundamentals of a more normal market. And we've forgotten to go back to what we need to do. Okay. So it's a relationship business. That's what we're in. Okay. It's a communication business that we're in. I want to let Colleen talk before we wrap it up. I'll stay a few extra minutes for any questions, but go ahead, Colleen.
I was thinking, Mickey, what if when you send your offer, you send a tracking list showing all the timelines and all the things that you do to stay on track with the offer and the sale, and say to
I
the other
highlighted in
agent.
the email and in the text. I send both since.
Oh, okay. All right. That's an excellent idea, because I think it shows them how fastidious you are and that you are a person that keeps on track of everything. I think that would go far.
Right, but when Colleen, did you ever want to drug another agent to get your deal accepted?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, I just gave you the techniques to release
Endorphins,
serotonin,
yes.
right, positive endorphins into their brain that will stimulate them to do the right thing. And this is not a manipulative thing. This is, hey, you know what? I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. And if you're wrong, you want to know that you're wrong, right? And that makes them feel like they're in charge. And if you've gotten it correctly, right, you've used the bonding drug so that they want to work with you. But
And this is for people that don't communicate with you. But I also like Glenn's idea of a video.
We are skipping steps in this business. We forgot the fundamentals, okay? And it's once there's bad habits, good markets create bad habits, right?
Absolutely.
Challenging markets require good habits. Okay.
Challenging markets require more communication. You're right, Rob.
Pivoting markets require strong habits to be successful. Okay. So and this is not trying to be, I'm not being critical of anybody at all. I'm just trying to give everybody some extra tools so that you can help and recognize, first of all, the worst negotiation is the one that you don't even know you're in. So when you're trying to get somebody on the phone, you're negotiating to get them on the phone, right? And then when you get them on the phone, you have a really short period of time to make an impression and to give them those endorphins that make them want to work with you, right? You want to bond with them. You don't want to give them the endorphins that make them want to run away from you. Okay, there is some science behind this, and it's not sneaky manipulative. This is all, good, honest, solid, pitching and catching, blocking and tackling. It's the fundamentals of the business that we need to get back to, that sometimes we don't even think about. We're so busy trying to get the client to make the right offer, put the right amount of money down. But, Colleen, if I was to say to you, hey, you know what, I just want to make sure that you notice that, my client's putting 35% down, right? Yeah, I just want to make sure you share that with the seller. And of course, how that helps it. Like those things, a lot of times we just take for granted. And years ago, we didn't. Okay. So
you're right. A lot of times the agents just overlook, everything except for the sale price. And you're right.
So try this as a technique, what percentage of agents, and I'm not going to ask you, Colleen, but somebody else on the phone call, what percentage of agents that you call answer the phone when you call them the first time? Is
50-50.
it 50-50? I'm going to say it's even a lot less than that. Anybody think 50-50 or higher want to give Ron
I want to say 30.
I'm going to say like 20 to 30% of the people answer the phone the first time you call them. So what if you were to genuinely say, hey, Ron, first of all, I want to thank you for answering the phone. How does that make you feel? Probably makes you feel a little bit good. Or if you just say, hey, Ron, I want to thank you for what? Oh, for answering the phone. It creates a little bit of levity and it has authenticity and sincerity. right? Because most people don't answer the phone. And then you say, hey, if we're fortunate enough to do this transaction, I want to let you know that I'm going to be somebody that communicates. You know, if there's ever any good or bad information, I'm going to put it forward to you. And, you know, I pride myself on making all the deadlines in a transaction and making it stress and drama free. I don't know if that's something that you like in a transaction. Who the hell is going to say they don't like that? Right?
Yeah.
So you just bond it with them, and then they're pulling for your offer before they even know what it is.
You know,
Okay.
my class on Tuesday, this next Tuesday, is going to be on listing presentations. And when you're the listing agent, and this goes out to Mickey too, when you're the listing agent, you're getting probably multiple offers on the property. So that listing agent probably has a relationship with another agent who brought her the offer, and that's probably why they ignored Mickey's presentation or her phone call. So that happens a lot. Okay, that's considered a bad listing agent, because no matter what, when you're a listing agent, you should be representing, you know, the property to all brokers, and have the brokers, you know, at least have some kind of communication with them. And that's probably what happened. She probably had somebody that she was been working with before, and they brought her an offer, and she's trying to work that offer before Mickey's offer. And that's probably why they didn't really want to pay attention to Mickey.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Right. Well,
Rob, on
Ron,
this subject, Rob, you know, because of me, Ron, and many others, you know, we are always on the listing side before we go on the seller side. If you get 10 offers, 15 or whatever, how would you handle it? What would be the best procedure for you to handle it?
so for me, okay, I would, if I got an offer and I didn't even get a phone call, okay, to me, that offer is slightly tainted. I'm just saying how I am. And if you didn't answer the phone, that's another story, but like, you want to make sure that they showed the property. You want to hear the tonality of the way that they talk to you. And if I had 10 or 15 offers in this market, I'd take an hour and I'd speak to the 10 or 15 agents before I made my recommendations to my client. That's just me. I don't know. Anybody else have any opinion on that? Rob Durso, what's your
Hey,
thought?
Rob. Hey, Rob, it's Michael
Michael,
Luzzy.
okay.
How are you? I think as a listing agent, you owe, whether you have 2 offers or 15 offers, you owe those agents a phone call just to let them know what's going on, that there are multiple offers. And like you said, kind of get a feel with these agents. Did they show the property, or they just winging it and throwing an offer out there? So I think it is important. I mean, what I've done is basically make a list of the agents, you know, the offer, and I get back to them and tell them what's going on. I think as an agent, as a listing agent, you owe that to the agents. Just like if it were reversed, I would expect a call. So
Right,
that's my opinion.
When you're the listing agent, you know, you have to have that communication, and, you know, you have to be polite, you know, because listen, you're going to be on the opposite side someday when you're going to call that agent. You have a buyer, you're going to call that agent, they're going to say, yeah, I worked with you before, you were great. Yeah. So you have to be cordial with all the agents, and you have to work it out. But there's a lot of agents that are not like that. Some listing agents, you know, think they're the king of the hill, and they don't need to answer your phone call, and they don't need to respond to you. That's a shame.
Absolutely.
So we have some tools right in our systems. I don't know what you use in Florida, but we have showing desk, showing time, offer manager through that same company. When you have more than 10 offers on something, the easiest way to keep in touch with them is to do it through that. I'm not suggesting they don't deserve the phone call at some point, but in the beginning, when you're trying to make heads or tails of your offers, this is an excellent way, right through the system. You write one email and it goes to everybody. And when you're doing an offer, I don't know how you guys feel, but just getting anything to give to my buyer is valuable. They called back, they texted, this is what's happening, and yada, yada, yada. It's when you get that crickets that you create the biggest set of problems. And certainly, you know, at some point you pick up the phone, but I'm just suggesting that in certain areas of the country, we get there's just no inventory and you get multiple offers on everything and it can be difficult. So something's better than nothing. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, Rob, we're not going to perfect everybody here. I just want to give everybody a different perspective. And if you think I'm wrong, I have broad enough shoulders to take that. But
I
my
think we all
job,
agree.
my job is to take us out of the, some people are bad apples, people don't communicate, and, have a process and have a way of standing out when you communicate with people. Because to me, somebody called me up and said, hey, I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to communicate the good, the bad, the ugly. I've worked with these people. I haven't worked with them. I work with the vendors. I haven't worked with the vendors. That all goes into my decision-making process and influences what I would recommend a homeowner to accept, right? So certainty and predictability has a process in the negotiation. And, if there's somebody that doesn't answer the phone, I might even look at that, Rob, as an advantage, because most people are just going to succumb to the fact that this guy doesn't, or this lady doesn't answer the phone. And I'm going to find a way to get in touch with them. And I'm going to have a conversation that's going to have me stand out from the rest of the competition and make the process easier for them. If they're not, if they're a part-time person, they can't answer the phone because they're teaching school. Okay. If I know that, I can help my client and I can make a decision that, hey, maybe I'll meet the appraiser because you might be teaching class, right? I'll make that easier. Do you think a listing agent might say, wow, that's awesome. I don't have to worry about, opening the house for the appraiser to go there, or doing something that is normally in their, it's customarily their responsibility, but because we communicated, we made one small sacrifice to get a big transaction done for our client. That's what negotiation and leadership is about, in my opinion. And if you learn one or two things here, I'm truly grateful. And I just want to give you additional ways to think about growing your business and not feeling victimized by where we are, because the business truly is, it's fair. Everybody has to deal with the same bunch of counterparts, and our result is determined by how we engage with them. So I want everybody to have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you all next week.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.